In today's video, we have the latest trade talk around the NHL, focusing on teams like Colorado, Edmonton, and Ottawa. We also have some updates on the Mike Babcock investigation. We have some expansion discussions I want to have today as well. Plus, we have an update on the Rasmus Dahlin contract extension, some PTOs, some UFA speculation, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news to talk about today, some trade talk as well. First up, we're going to start with an interesting story, I guess you could say. The official sports drink of the NHL, BioSteel, is actually seeking bankruptcy protection. So as much as they're a very popular drink within the professional athlete world, and I think within other levels of athletes as well. I know locally a lot of our even youth athletes love BioSteel. But the way the business is being run, it's being run into the ground slowly but surely. So the original founders, of course, included Mike Camilleri, former NHL player, but then the business was later sold. I believe it's like a cannabis company that owns the BioSteel company now, been operating it, and they are now looking to seek bankruptcy protection. They're looking to find a new buyer who can run the business as its own separate entity. Essentially, like this company, as much as they've got something good going, revenue and sales are actually up quite a bit year over year, but the cost for them to achieve that business was extremely high, and you're just going further and further into the red here all the time. Of course, they've got a lot of NHL players on sponsorships. They have the NHL as a league sponsorship agreement as well, and it's just I think they might have tried to grow too much too fast. I don't know, but certainly to see them close up shop would be bad. I mean, certainly there's other drinks around that can certainly take their place, like Gatorade, etc. But it's an unfortunate thing. But I know they have a lot of athletes under contract. They just had the big BioSteel based NHL training camp that they do for a few days at the end of every NHL offseason. Be curious to see where this goes. It's expected that like a very high percentage. I think in North America they employ around, I think the number was around 180 people, and it's expected that at least 170 or so are going to be out of a job because of this. So that leaves very few people. I'm not sure what this is going to mean for production or what this is going to mean for the product in the marketplace or what have you. But yeah, it's certainly a story we're going to want to keep an eye on and see where this goes from here. I do want to talk a little bit about expansion as well. There's been some more talk in recent days from ESPN, and it's kind of got fueled a little bit more. Of course, the NHL is doing their media tour right now, the North American leg of that in Vegas. And of course, one of the people that's been doing interviews is Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. So he's been asked about a variety of topics, of course, that concern the league, and this is one that he was asked about. So where he's commented on it, it's kind of getting more attention in the news, and more writers are talking about it. But essentially, expansion is not real high on the NHL's radar, but he's something that he would not rule out. It made it sound like in the next 4 or 5 years, it's a real possibility we could see. And essentially, the way he positioned it was that if there are cities and people out there who would like to own a team, come talk to us. It's not like a pressing issue for us right now, but something that we'll consider here in a little bit. He was asked about the potential of going back to the city of Atlanta for a third attempt, and the NHL very much is open to it. Doesn't mean for sure it's going to happen, but he did say that a lot of the issues that they had in previous incarnations of this team would not be expected to be present anymore, and that they could overcome those and be more successful this time around. Obviously, the Atlanta market is pretty significant. It's a huge market in the U.S., and they'd love to be in it, which is a big reason why they don't give up on the Coyotes, is because that area as well, from a market perspective, it's a huge area. So can understand that. So we'll see when expansion becomes a little bit more of a hot topic. We may do a dedicated video on that sometime in the next few weeks or months. There's certainly lots of other locations that are probably going to be in the running here as well. I can see the NHL adding a few more teams in the next 3 to 5 years. But there was rumored from Darren Dreger of TSN today saying that based on what he's heard with all the talk about expansion, that the next expansion fee could be upwards of $2 billion. That's a lot of money. I'm not sure how anxious some of these owners are going to be to pony up that kind of money, but that would be a huge revenue increase for the league. So we'll see where that goes. But expansion is definitely going to probably pick up steam in the next, I'd say in the next year for sure. Now on to some other NHL news. Let's talk a bit more about the Mike Babcock situation in Columbus. There is further investigation being taken place. The members of the NHLPA, I believe, including Executive Director Marty Walsh and his second in command, which I believe is former NHL player Ron Hainsey, apparently are in person in Columbus to personally look into this matter. It's believed that they're probably talking to the team. I assume they probably talked to Babcock himself and speaking with players. At this point, I don't know if or what will come from it or if we'll learn anything more about their findings or what have you, but it is something that's being taken very seriously. And even though the team and Boone Jenner as a player and Johnny Gaudreau have all spoken out saying it wasn't a big deal, it's taken out of context, misconstrued, whatever, they're taking it seriously. And I wonder, though, I can't help but wonder if whoever the player was, that was obviously somebody had to be uncomfortable with this for it to reach Paul Bissonnette, who talked about it on his podcast. And then, of course, did that person also, maybe go to the PA as well? I don't know. It's hard to say exactly how everything came to be. Clearly, even if they didn't go to the PA, they obviously heard about it through the podcast, through what Bissonnette was saying, and Mike Commodore and other players have spoken out against Babcock as well. So I don't know if anything's really going to come from this. It sounds like a lot of people kind of agree that it might be an odd thing, but it may not be anything that's really inappropriate either. It depends on how things went down. There's a lot of obviously things that we don't know. But the fact that it's still being investigated, taken seriously, and as Elliotte Friedman said yesterday, I don't think we've heard the end of this. I have to say that's probably true, and I don't think we're there yet either. So I assume we'll get some kind of update once their investigation's completed. We'll at least learn if anything is being looked into any further or any repercussions or whatnot from there. Some other news around the league. The Penguins have made another addition to their front office. They've hired John Elkin. They made some other changes as well, but John Elkin comes to the Penguins as their new director of goaltending. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Kyle Dubas also hired him in Toronto. So he worked with Dubas there in the Maple Leafs in their goaltending department as well. So certainly, Dubas continues to bring in some familiar faces there. We also have some other news around the league, including some UFA stuff. Chris Johnson's reporting that UFA Phil Kessel is still generating a lot of interest, and I think since the reports came out that he doesn't care so much about his Ironman streak anymore. He just wants to play. He wants to have a contract. He understands he may not be an everyday player. And apparently, according to CJ, there is a real possibility that he believes there's some good optimism right now that not only is Kessel going to go to training camp with somebody, but he's likely going to get a contract and not have to go on a PTO. That could change, but he said as of right now, Kessel's not like in that PTO territory where he's only have options for that. He thinks there's a chance that a team is going to offer him a 1-year deal and actually sign him. So we'll see if Phil the Thrill gets this deal or how he has to go about trying to get back to the NHL this year. Andrew Peters, of course, former Buffalo Sabre, current podcaster as well regarding the Sabres, Sabres-based podcast with his buddy Craig Rivet. He was talking about on Twitter saying that the Rasmus Dahlin contract extension is kind of at a standstill here. Essentially what's going on is that Dahlin, it looks like he wants a shorter term. The Sabres are pretty hell-bent by the sounds of things on getting him locked up for 8 years, and I don't blame them, really, as good as he's been and as much as he's developed. I can understand why they want to lock him up for 8 years, but based on what he's saying the player wants 5 years. So this is kind of a similar scenario that Austin Matthews was dealing with in Toronto. The team really wanted to lock him up longer term. He, based on his age and contracts, I'm assuming that this must be a strategy employed between Dahlin and his agent to try to maximize their earnings, feeling that this would be a good way for him to be able to re-up and get another long-term deal before he's getting too much older. Obviously, Dahlin would at that point would still only be around like 30, 31 or whatever the exact age would be. Like he's still fairly young at this point in his career. So clearly, he would be able to get a 7-8 year deal then. The cap would be higher. He could continue to get better. He could make more money. So if this is more of a, maximize my career earnings type of strategy, at least you kind of understand where it's coming from. But if the two can't agree on a term, even if they agree somewhat on the money side of it, that's going to be an issue, and it's hard to say how long this could drag out. Certainly, they're not in that big of a rush. I think both sides will like to get it done as soon as they could, just so it's not a distraction. At this point, according to Andrew Peters, Dahlin is not happy and a little frustrated that it's not done as of yet. So we'll kind of see who blinks first and how that all plays out. We did get some more PTOs today as well. Some more professional tryout agreements been signed. Both of the Ritchie brothers have training camps to go to now. Nick Ritchie is going to training camp with the St. Louis Blues, and his brother Brett Ritchie is going to be attending training camp with the Florida Panthers. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to be bringing in a couple more players as well, including Kiefer Bellows, former Islander and Flyer, and Zach Aston-Reese as well, who played last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs, played a long time with the Penguins prior to that. And the Ottawa Senators today confirmed that they've signed long veteran Josh Bailey. He's getting a PTO as well. Now, when it comes to Josh Bailey, we had talked, I want to say it was probably at least a month ago. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been, but probably sometime into mid to late July about Bailey being linked to the Senators. There's lots there that make sense. Clearly, we know that he was a longtime Islander. It was probably difficult for him to leave, but the Sens would be one of the teams with the most familiarity for him if that's what he's looking for. He was born and raised in Ontario, not from Ottawa, but it's pretty close to home from where he grew up, so that might be appealing. He's worked with most of the coaching staff before. Obviously, Senators assistant coach Jack Capuano used to be Bailey's head coach with the Islanders, so there's that connection. He also was coached by DJ Smith and Bob Jones in junior when they were with the Windsor Spitfires. So certainly lots of connections there. And of course, he was former teammates with Travis Hamonic for quite a while on Long Island too. So there's lots of familiarity there. At this point, the Sens, which will kind of transition into some other Sens talk here, is that we know they need to make a move. They need to make a move to free up some space to sign Shane Pinto. The longest rumor has been that Matthew Joseph is going to be the odd guy out that Pierre Dorion looks to move here. And I wonder if something might be heating up on that front, and the timing here, the Bailey PTO is kind of might work out. We'll see if there's anything to this, but essentially looking at Joseph being a third line right winger who's known for killing penalties and being more of an energy player, decent defensively, doesn't contribute as much as you'd like offensively. Really quick, though, great skater. Now, Bailey doesn't have the wheels that Joseph has, but he is a really reliable, solid defensive player who's a good penalty killer. So, and he's a veteran, obviously, lots of experience, and, maybe in the right scenario, he could generate a little bit more offense than he has towards the end of his Islanders career. Hard to say, but, he could be a much cheaper version as a third-line right winger than Joseph. Joseph making $2.95. Right now, the Sens have just shy of $900K in cap space. That would put them just a little bit shy of $4 million in available space if they can move Joseph without taking a contract back. So that would give them the money to sign Pinto, which you're probably looking at somewhere around $2.5 or so million. They could, maybe even go upwards of $3 million if they wanted to go a little bit longer term and more than a 1 year deal. If they wanted to go 2 or 3 years or 3 times 3, they could do that, and they could still bring in Bailey on a 1 year league minimum deal, which I'm assuming is all he would get. There's been no mention about Derek Brassard getting a PTO as of yet, so we don't know. I know he had suffered a pretty gruesome, serious injury to finish out last year, and word was he would either come back to the Sens if he felt he could go, or he may retire. We don't have clarity on that yet. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I think by now we probably would have known. I'd suspect that Brassard's probably hanging him up, but we'll have to wait and confirm that a little bit later. So it doesn't mean for sure that this Bailey PTO is a connection to a Joseph trade coming soon, but it could be, and it could be like an insurance piece that Dorian's looking to move him. Bailey could slot in and cover a lot of those minutes as a veteran and play, that defensive role, penalty killing role. Like I said, he doesn't have Joseph's wheels, but he has a lot of the other things that you like for that kind of spot in your lineup. So, there is something there that kind of makes sense to me. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. Obviously, but Dorian had a meeting today with the mayor of Ottawa, Mark Sutcliffe, which was supposed to be Sens' new owner, Michael Landlauer. It's called the Mayor's Breakfast. And the whole point here was to kind of introduce the new owner of the Sens to the community and have a chance for the public and everything to kind of get a glimpse of him and ask more questions and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, he can't be introduced as the owner yet because the sale's not 100% closed. There's rumors that could happen as early as tomorrow. It could drag over to the beginning of next week, Monday, Tuesday. Either way, it's imminent, and that's been confirmed by Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner, as well. It's just a matter of exactly when. So we'll see. We might be talking about this as soon as tomorrow, but regardless, he could not be there today for this meeting. So Dorian went in his place, made some comments, and he said in regards to Shane Pinto that he's very optimistic that he'll have him signed in the next few days, and that they definitely want to see him at training camp. They don't want him to be late getting into camp. And that he feels the fans will be quite happy with the team this year. Didn't want to make any predictions about playoffs and all that. He said that they're just trying to do the best they can. And he certainly came off as being fairly confident in his words and everything. So that leads us to think that a trade of some sort to free up that space to sign Pinto is likely coming soon here in the coming days, and then they can get everything else sorted out, and that'll create a better opportunity for Bailey. But of course, Bailey still has to go to camp and still has to show that he can play. So we'll see where things go on that front. Some other trade talk around the league. I want to look at the Avalanche. According to NHL insider Chris Johnston, the Avalanche may be a team that's looking for help in the goaltending department. According to his reports, goaltender Pavel Francouz had off-season surgery for an adductor issue and is not fully recovered and is likely not going to be cleared and ready to play to start the season. So the Avalanche, at this point, likely looking for some goaltending help. While you look around the league, there's certainly some teams out there to look for. Now, it depends, right? If Francouz is going to be available, a few weeks, month into the season, I don't know how long. We don't really have a timeline here. But it's not going to be too long, then this goalie that they sign might end up on waivers, when Francouz is ready to come back. So hard to say exactly which direction he'd go to, but a couple of teams come to mind that would probably want to trade a goalie, and that would be Montreal with their three-headed monster between the pipes, so probably Casey DeSmith. And then, of course, you have the Calgary Flames, who are looking to get Dustin Wolf in the NHL, and likely move Danny Vladar. So either of those guys, to me, would be a good option. DeSmith makes a little bit more money than Vladar, I think, or maybe it's pretty close, actually. So it might not be that drastically different in either direction here. But at the same time, I don't know if that's what the Avalanche will do, or maybe they want to go with a cheaper contract, but they're the main teams that come to mind. Either way, the Avalanche are reportedly in a goalie market for some insurance, and we'll see what things work out from there. Also, an article in The Athletic here in recent days regarding the Edmonton Oilers from Alan Mitchell, talking about Jack Campbell and how, of course, he had a terrible year last year, his first year of a 5-year contract with the Oilers. The article basically says that at this point, the Oilers are really hopeful and optimistic for a bounce-back season, and that if he starts slow, expect Campbell to have a bit of a short leash, and that the Oilers will likely look to trade him and make a move early in the season if he begins to struggle out of the gates. Now, I can understand why the Oilers would want to replace him as soon as possible if what they saw last year is continuing into this year, but that's easier said than done. He'd still have 3 full seasons plus the rest of the current one on a $5 million contract. So, that's a lot of term, and it's a lot of money. You're going to have to pay somebody a sweet incentive to take that off your hands. So, obviously, the Oilers at this point, though, are more concerned with trying to win a Stanley Cup with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I think that's priority number one. If they have to mortgage the future to get rid of this bad deal and get another goalie who can get the job done, I think Ken Holland and the management team there would certainly be more than willing to get that done. So we'll see. Again, easier said than done. Not surprising that Campbell's name is in the rumor mill after what season he had last year, but given his contract, it's going to be awfully tough to move with so much, not only a bad contract, but a lot of term and a lot of money, and we'll see where that goes. But the Oilers could be on the goalie market for some help as well if he struggles early like he did last year. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.